Hey there, Algebra 3. This is Mr. Kushan. I am so happy you're with me as we take a look at our very first lesson, which is review of functions and their graphs. We're going to start with linear functions, and these start out in 8th grade, and they have a few different characteristics that we should be aware of. This one right here is telling you the slope. That's the m value, that's the slope. That's telling us that we have a slope of 3. And just to kind of look at why that is, we could take any 2 points. So it looks like maybe right here and right there. And remember that slope is rise over run, or your change in y over your change in x. So let's look at the change in y. We're going up from 1 to 4. That's a rise of 3. And a run of 1. So that means our slope is 3 over 1, or we could just simplify that to be 3. So the slope of this line is 3. Now another important part of the linear equation is what's known as the y-intercept. And that's right there. That's called the b value. So b is the y-intercept. And that tells you where does this function cross the y-axis. And we can see right there it's at the -2. So that's where we're getting the -2 in the equation from. And of course this right here is telling us the slope. Okay. So slope and y-intercept are the important features of a linear equation. Also note that a linear equation is a line and it extends to infinity in both directions. Okay, now you might be asked to evaluate a linear function in this lesson and in lessons ahead. And that's a pretty simple process. Just don't get too freaked out by what's known as function notation. That's f of 2. Because this is all this is really saying. What it wants us to do is, if f of x equals 3x minus 2, find f of 2. So all we have to do there is put in a 2 for that x value. We're going to have 3 times 2 minus 2. 3 times 2 is 6 minus 2. So f of 2 would simply be 6 minus 2, which is 4. So that means on this graph, if we had a x value of 2, we'd have an output or a y value of 4. And I'll go back up here and we will see that exactly. As a matter of fact, it's right here where I made the line, which is at this point. That is 2, 4. Okay. Alright, now let's take a look at the other type of function that we use quite a bit in Algebra 1 and 2. So a quadratic function, you can tell right away, much different than a linear. For one, it's not a line. It's in the shape of a parabola. It has a vertex. That is either the minimum point or the maximum point. In this particular function, it is the minimum point. It's the lowest that the graph goes. You also have zeros or roots where it intercepts with the x-axis. You have a line called an axis of symmetry that divides the parabola evenly because quadratic functions are symmetrical. These kinds of equations can be written in different ways, and because I'm a baller and I've been doing this for a while, I can recognize what another version of this equation would look like. It's called vertex form. I can see that the vertex is at 2, 1, which tells me that another way to express this would be x minus 2 squared minus 1. That's the same exact expression as the one you see up here. So it has a couple different forms depending on what you're trying to use the quadratic function for. Now we also will evaluate these. In this case, we're going to be finding out f of 3. So I'm going to be putting 3 in for every place that I see x, which is only 2 places. So here we've got 9 minus 12 plus 3. So the output, when the input is 3, is 9 minus 12, negative 3. Negative 3 plus 3 would be 0. So f of 3 equals 0. And if we look up on our graph here, it's the same equation that we had up there. And yes, at 3, there it is, y is 0. Let's do a quick recap of our functions here. We had linear functions. Those are going to be in the form of y equals mx plus b. There's going to be a slope. There's a y-intercept. And in these problems, x is raised to the power of 1. Quadratic functions, you have a vertex, zeros or roots, and an axis of symmetry. And in these problems, x is raised to the power of 2.